Hello to all of you. I am Alberto Marín, and I'm going to present a brief summary of what I've been doing this year about my thesis, which is a two-dimensional model of wall interaction in Hall effect thruster discharges. So first of all, the context of the presentation. I will start with some motivation of my study, a brief introduction of Hall effect thrusters. Then I will explain what is plasma wall interaction and why is it important for us, the thesis plan, methodology I'm going to follow, some previous work which are also related with some things that we have recently published, some more recent results which are going to cover 1D simulation and 2D simulations, and current and future work if we have time. So the motivation of the thesis is wall interaction in Hall effect thruster. So first we have to know what is a Hall effect thruster. Well, is it is leading the world of electric propulsion, and basically what we have is a system which has some magnetic coils to generate a magnetic field which is mainly radial but has some 2D features. Then we have an anode and a cathode. The neutrals are injected through the anode plate and get ionized inside the chamber. Once they are ionized, they become ions which are accelerated by the potential difference which is generated between the anode and the cathode. And electrons are generated at the cathode, and some of them come inside and some of them go outside and neutralize the plume. It is a widely known technology which has been used since the 70s, and it is already a very mature technology which has been used extensively. But there are still some open problems. The two main ones are plasma wall interaction and anomalous electron transport. I will be covering the plasma wall interaction, and Enrique has already covered some things about anomalous electron transport. So, as I have said, the main goal of the thesis is the theoretical study of plasma wall interaction. Why are we interested in studying plasma wall interaction? Well, because it is very important for the performance of the thruster. Indeed, it is responsible for energy losses, ion recombination, wall material erosion, and even some authors claim that it is responsible for anomalous electron transport. This is a phenomenon which is called near wall conductivity, which I will develop a little bit later if we have time. So in order to study this problem of plasma wall interaction, we have to solve the dynamics of the plasma inside the Hall effect thruster chamber. What happens? That the plasma inside the chamber is weakly collisional. So we don't have thermodynamic equilibrium. Then we require a full characterization of the different species velocity distribution function. This requires a kinetic study of the plasma, which is very computationally expensive because of the very small length scales, time scales, and the very different dynamics of the different species. My thesis plan starts from simple to more complex. So first we want to start analyzing plasma wall interaction in a very simplified scenario, so in a 1D scenario. We want to cover mainly what are the effects of anomalous plasma wall interaction in electron variables. We also want to analyze what is the effect of anomalous transport models on this plasma wall interaction, the effect of an oblique magnetic field, which is not perfectly radial, high secondary electron emission scenarios, and we also want to extend this analysis to a more complex and more realistic 2D scenario, covering adding some axial effects on the radial dynamic, also analyzing 2D and complex magnetic topologies, and finally characterize the particle and energy fluxes to the wall. As a final goal of this thesis, we would like to analyze the kinetic solutions and find scaling laws for macroscopic magnitudes to be used by electron fluid models. What is the methodology and the method I'm going to use? Well, it is called the PIC algorithm, which stands for particle in cell algorithm, which is meant to solve the Boltzmann equation, which is this one, by discretizing the velocity distribution function of the different species in terms of particle. As Enrique has already presented, this PIC method has different steps, like calculating the electric and magnetic field, moving particles, addressing surface interaction, particle collisions, computation of relevant macroscopic magnitude that we can evaluate, and output this relevant data to a file which we can post-process. My study is going to make use of two of these models. The first one is going to be a 1D model, and the second one is going to be a 2D model, which is still in development. So previous work that have already that we have previously published in a recent paper in 2021, assume a purely radial magnetic field and a simplified axial location of the acceleration region of the Hall effect thruster, and also assumes that from the walls there can be some secondary electron emission which can be important to our discharge. What we find out of this study is that the depletion of the high energy tails of the velocity distribution function. As you can see here, the blue line is not completely, it does not follow the black line as the theory predicts. So this is an important conclusion of this study. This implies a significant electron temperature anisotropy. Furthermore, we also found that the particular energy fluxes to the wall does not follow those predicted by the Maxwellian velocity distribution function, which is what uses classic theory. We also discovered some non-standard effects on the macroscopic electron transport equations, which I'm not going to go very much into detail, but also add some additional complexity to the problem. And we also addressed the effect of different phenomenological anomalous transport models in this discharge. Now that we have already analyzed this case, we are going to a more complex and more realistic case in which the magnetic field is not necessarily aligned with the radial direction. So here we have an oblique magnetic field line which has this kind of bow shape, and here I'm only going to consider symmetric scenarios in which one angle is the opposite of the other one. Okay? So here what we see is that we start with the 0 degrees angle, which is going to be the same one as we commented in the previous slide, which would correspond to the radial scenario. And we compare them with the scenarios with an oblique magnetic field. We see a significant replenishment of the velocity distribution function. Then this implies a reduction in temperature anisotropy, and this facilitates the radial and axial transfer of electron energy. This is going to make important effects in the plasma-wall interaction problem, as we will see in the next slide. So here we can see that the plasma wall, the currents collected by the walls change significantly when we apply a oblique magnetic field, and for some angles it increases and for others it decreases. It also has some effects on the profiles of some main macroscopic magnitudes in our domain. This can be explained by the radial electron momentum equation, which I'm not going to go very much into detail, but if you are interested later, I can elaborate a little bit more. And in order to explain a little bit further our results, we developed a simplified fluid model which has an excellent matching with our kinetic results and help us to understand and poses some interesting questions about some typical assumptions that are taken in fluid models which may not be true anymore. Then we also wanted to analyze the scenarios with high secondary electron emission, which is also a very hot topic in plasma wall interaction, in the plasma wall interaction community, because it affects performances, energy losses, and near wall conductivity. Typically, we can find these different regimes, and all of them has some different characteristics and are interesting for different applications. And the important thing of this study is that instabilities may arise. The previous results were stationary. Now we may have instabilities that may change our problem a little bit. Now moving on to the simulations. These are still some very basic results. The model is still not completed. I'm using the same one as Enrique and, well, Enrique and I are developing the model together, and it is still not finished, but we are already finding some interesting results. So these are the kind of results we are looking for. Here the left boundary represents the anode, the right boundary represents the thruster exit. Here we have the two lateral walls, and between the anode and the exit, we impose a potential difference. And these are the kind of results that we are getting. This is the density of electrons, these are the ion streamlines, this is potential, and this is electric field. Still, we have to think a little bit more on the inputs of the parameter to get meaningful results. But we are already starting to see some interesting stuff. Another type of simulation, another type of study that may be very interesting is the radial azimuthal simulation. Why? Because it self-consistently solves azimuthal instability and does not require any phenomenological anomalous transport model. And this also allows to address the interaction of the plasma instability with the walls. So regarding the results that I have already, well, the results and the conference that I have already gone, these are the two I went to last year, two additional contributions to the E-Cross-B Plasma Workshop, and a conference that is going to be next week in the IPC conference that most of you mentioned. A published paper and another one in progress, and some current and future work that we are planning to do. This development of the 2D code is going to be done in collaboration with Enrique, and we still have some important tasks to be accomplished. And for the 2D simulation, we still have to define some study cases and some more realistic cases that we can use to understand interesting stuff. So this is all from my side, and if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask.